Hi Dhruv, how are you? I have you onto the podcast after a very long time, and I've been looking forward to talking with you on activism and building a community. And the reason I've got you onto the podcast is because activism is something that people really do not know a lot about, and what is the process really like of going out and actually building a community and actually bringing about social change. Everyone knows the end product, but the process in general is very unknown. So through this podcast, we'll try to understand what is that process like, what is it really like to build a community, and what are the challenges that one might face if they want to start out something similar. So let's get straight started. Let's start with your journey. What got you into activism and why activism?
So I think during the last wave of COVID-19, we came across a number of issues that were highly, sensitive and important to people of my age groups, and that led to a sort of a mechanism to activate the activism in a group of people in Bangalore. So this was more or less a trigger point for a lot of us, where there was a huge problem with government policy that was directly affecting people of my age group. So that was what led to the whole part of how the activism began.
Okay. And why is activism, according to you, important in today's age? We have seen people get into different form of activism, right? We've got social media campaigns that go about. People actually go about their way to actually start a campaign in the physical world in general, and it's happening at a far larger scale than ever before. So why is activism important today, and why should more and more people actually get their hands or actually contribute to the society in general through activism?
So activism plays a huge part in what I would say influencing government policy, right? So it's one of the key and most major ways of public pressure,
Right.
areas in which the public can get more deeply involved in how the government functions and how it should be functioning. So this is where activism comes out to play a key role. And the second part of your question was how people can get more involved in it, right?
Right.
So, um, a way that activism actually starts within your homes, right? You start feeling sensitive. You start feeling more involved about issues when you read about them, watch programs on TV, where for example, if it's a situation where there's there's a large number of trees that are getting cut, because environmental activism is one of the biggest sort of streams that people our age group take. So
Hmm.
that, for example, when you see a large number of trees getting cut for economical use, so that's when a lot of people begin to use that activism in various ways through social media platforms. Some also hit the roads to in fact protest. So these are the ways of activism that people are sort of engaging. So the most important sort of method in how to engage yourself in activism is firstly to keep yourself updated about current issues that go around, and see what concerns you the most, what you deeply feel for, and where you think you can make a change. So the biggest problem is that many people think that activism is just something where you can just sort of raise your voice to a certain extent, but not make concrete, be like a real change maker. But that's actually faulty, because activism to a very large extent has sort of helped and influenced many changes within policy making. So yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your journey, right? So when you start out with any form of activism, there is resistance of sorts. Now, this can have an effect on your mental health, but getting over these mental challenges can lead to personal growth and can also lead to creating a positive impact on the society. Dude, the process is very different and it's quite unknown, like I had mentioned earlier. So, what was the process and grind like when you started with this process, and how has your journey been till now? I'll just add on. What were the challenges that you faced while growing your community through activism?
Um, so I'll begin with I have two main instances that sort of trigger the whole growth of activism in my journey. So I'll begin with the first one. The first one was when during the first wave, the primary and secondary education ministry in Karnataka decided to hold exams for PUC students.
Right.
So this was when we, as a community, came out and decided that we would protest against this. And so we had gotten all permissions, everything was in place. But the next morning, when everything was in place and we were ready for having these protests outside these colleges where we said that we condemn this act, was when I woke up. The first call I got was from the education minister, straight up, saying,
Okay.
don't protest. Like, he straight up said, don't protest. And this was the first time that we were even conducting a protest. So we were, what I would say is, we were not extremely aware about how to go about a protest. Um, so so we were, what I would say, in two minds, right? Whether to continue or whether not to continue. Then we had a lot of calls from the police officers who had given permissions themselves, who were so scared, saying, please don't come. We really can't help you with anything. You can't come here and have a protest. We've gotten pressure from higher ups. There's nothing much you can do about it. So then the education minister said, don't protest. Come to my office. We'll sit and talk about it. So
Okay.
he called us to his office, but unfortunately he was not there. Like, it was, what I would say, an escape trap or something. I don't know what you
Hmm.
call it, but yeah. So this was my first instance where we thought that trusting these government officials for what I would say a diplomatic talk in compromise for a protest works, but that clearly didn't. The second sort of instance that's very closely related to my growth and activism as well was the whole Disha Ravi protest.
Okay.
I'm not
Correct.
too sure, but if you remember, when Disha had gotten arrested, there was a lot of hostility around Disha's arrest. If you actually calculate the series of events that took place in the beginning, people were very, very scared to speak up against anything, because they were in that sort of fiasco where a
If
young
you speak up,
teenager,
you'll probably get arrested. Yeah.
yeah, a young teenager who's into environmental activism is out of nowhere being connected into a whole situation of riots. So this was when, along with a group of people in Bangalore, I decided that we are going to protest against Disha's arrest. And this was the first protest that ever took place for Disha, and this is what changed the whole narrative in that case to a very large extent. Because
Wow.
prior to this, people were extremely scared. And when I decided to take up this protest, right, people were not okay with it. Like, there were many groups of students who came up and said, listen, we can't do it because we have pressure from home. Our parents are really scared and afraid to send us for such a thing. And I said, I totally understand, because it is a risk by the end of the day that I am taking myself, right? So because that's when Disha's case hadn't adjourned yet. If you actually see, there was no statements on her case that proved that she was either innocent or not, though she was. But that's how it was legally binding. So it was a very sensitive topic that we decided to take up, and it worked out really well. So this time, what we did was I realized that the orthodox sort of methods of activism and everything, like the normal protests, is something that has little bit of not little very little bit of an effect, right? It doesn't have an extreme effect. So what we did for this protest was we picked up plants, and
Okay.
with these plants we wrote Free Disha Ravi on it, and we called all media houses to come and cover it. And we marched from a certain point to the police station where Disha was first arrested, and we gave those saplings to the cops. over there. And surprisingly, the cops didn't even know much about the issue over there. So,
Hmm.
so the cops gracefully accepted it, thinking it was, some sort of an environmental protest by itself, which it actually was, asking to free an environmental activist, and that went viral everywhere.
Right.
And I think post that was when it was a completely different narrative. People started supporting her more, and the whole media outlook as well changed to a very large extent. So this was a very important protest that's closely that I closely sort of feel with, because I think there was a huge change that sort of evolved from this part. So yeah, this is where I come to the point as to, when you speak about activism, right? In today's sort of political atmosphere, it's very hostile for you to be, engaging in activism in the orthodox methods, like in the sense going
Correct.
out for regular protests, etc., etc., because there is some sort of clamp on your democratic freedoms and rights. So you have to
Hmm.
come up with creative ways of doing it. Like the pot protest was something I feel was creative. So just creative methods of engaging in your activism is extremely important in this current sort of political situation. So yeah, that's how I engage with people within my community who wish to sort of talk more about activism and be involved in it. I tell them to be as creative as possible, find the most unique methods to put across their point, because that's the only way they're also not going to get into trouble and get their message sent across.
Dude, that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, everyone cannot get into activism because it's not for everyone, because of the risks that you mentioned earlier. But if someone really wants to drive a cause, right, or bring about awareness or change in the society in general, what do they need to make sure that they have that they have taken care of while starting their campaigns to make sure that it's a little more effective and lasting, right? Because a lot of times if you look at social media as well, people might probably support a cause, but when it circles around their own 800, 900 followers or a community of sorts, it might not have an impact which is long lasting. You cannot account that. But if someone wants to account impact, what can they do and what should they do and what are the methods that they should follow to make it a little more effective?
So I'll tell you something. The bitter truth in today's social media activism is very simple. Like you can have a very just cause that you're fighting for, but
Hmm.
if you can't reach it out to the masses, then there's no point of it, because your just cause remains, like you said, within your 800, 900 followers. So what's important is to always have a strategy of marketing your activism in the right way. This involves trying to include a couple of social media influencers, trying to engage with the media directly, with media personnel directly. People think that people in the media are very unapproachable, but that's a faulty thing. They're very approachable. When you have pertinent issues and you explain it to them, they're more than happy to give you a platform to speak about your problems as well. So try to involve media at the highest level. Try to give representations to government officials on your activism, on the
Okay.
specific topics that you've chosen. So these three important things help. And lastly, engaging your social media not just to 800, but making it reach to about 80,000 people is important, not just 8,000. So you have to always have some sort of a strategy where you involve a lot of influential people, influencers around you, that if not you, but your friends know, who can relate to the cause and also help you spread the message across. So these are the four
So
key
how did you
sort of
how did you do
factors.
it when you started out? So what how did you probably approach activism when you started out to make it a little more effective in the start?
So the two main things I focused on was, one, networking with government officials within the state, networking with them
Okay.
as much as I could, so that anytime I had a representation or something that I could give to them, they would freely take it and they would openly take it. That's one. And second, networking with media houses. That's another very crucial sort of point, because when you directly network with media houses, you have some sort of I mean, it's not meant to give you credibility, but how public perceives it is as credibility. So when you network and get on shows, etc., and you speak about your cause, people on your social media tend to think that, okay, this is a very legitimate sort of thing. That's unfortunately, that's just how public opinion is. Like, if you speak on a channel about an issue, or if you speak about an issue just on your own channel, it has a very big difference. So
Right.
so I feel these are the two main things that I sort of worked on for a whole year. Trying to do these two things, in fact, helped a lot. So yeah, this is a suggestion that I have to anybody who wants to sort of grow in activism. These two main things are your key to, like, effective activism.
Great. Dude, but when you start out with activism, you eventually end out building a community, right? And a lot of the work that you did was offline. Even during the pandemic, you were working with frontline workers, you were working with migrants directly. So your work had direct implications on the livelihoods and lives of different communities in general. So when you start a cause of sorts, how do you finance these campaigns? How do you get those resources that you need to make sure that the campaign is effective? So what is that process like?
So I think this is like, I think everybody has their own secret sauce, right? So I think
Hmm.
this is the whole part of where my secret sauce lies. But I'll try to explain it in a very simple manner, and I'll give you parts of it so that you can understand it. So for anything to start across, anything within our age, right, to bring in people into a community, it has to be a trend. I'll give you an example. I tried to start a student community, the same thing that's existing right now, in 2018 back then, and it had zero impact. It had no volunteers, it had no community members. But just when the pandemic hit out and the migrant crisis began, it was an issue where people felt with very deeply. So it was easy to mobilize people. People wanted to come
Correct.
out and help. So that's a very important thing for activism as well, to get people to sort of link to a cause. Now, coming to the whole financing part, um, with I'll just explain our situation. In the beginning, we just raised a couple of funds from like donors who were willing to donate, and we did our work. We put it out in the media, and a couple of days after that, it just like kept coming in, because if you have a just cause for your social work and for your activism, you will keep getting financed and funded. That's something you should never worry about. You just need to make sure you have
Okay.
a just cause. So even for example, right now we just did a vaccination drive, right? We did it
Hmm.
through crowdfunding. So I believe in crowdfunding. That's something that I've always been believing in, because crowdfunding, I think, is a method of not just collecting sort of funds, but also it helps you reach out to people. Like, for example,
Right.
even if you're getting X person to donate just 10 rupees, that X person is aware of the cause, not just the fact that he's donating that 10 rupees.
Hmm.
So this is another way in which you sort of get the word multiplied across without using media platforms. So crowdfunding is something that I strongly believe in, and you just have to have faith in your cause. I mean, the minute you know that your cause is great and it's good, you will start getting financed well. It's as simple as that.
Great, makes sense. And you're the founder of the Bangalore Student Community. And I believe that strong communities accelerate change and transform societies in general. So you need to build a strong community to actually reach a point where there is change and you're able to bring about change. Dude, like I said, the Bangalore Student Community is one of the fastest growing youth communities in Bangalore and probably across India as well. What are the elements of building a community, right? So now that you have around 5,000 followers, what are the elements of that community that really keep that community thriving and keeps the drive to constantly accelerate growth and impact within the community?
So again, it's just about taking concrete action, in the sense engaging your community members in the right sort of atmosphere. And what I basically mean is engaging them in important issues that are pertinent to sort of what surrounds you, right around you. So that's what we do. We pick up issues that are extremely important to people, that within Bangalore city for now. Once we plan on expanding, then of course to different spaces as well. But it's what I'm saying. To keep your community going, you have to be hitting the right issues. You have to be touching, the hearts of people where it matters the most. So this is something that we always do when we think about an issue that we want to take up. We're always consulting our community members. We're always asking them, what do you think about it? Do you think it's
Hmm.
right? Do you think this is something we should do? And most of them, because these are good issues, they always align themselves with it and come out and wish to help. So in our era, right, we are very sort of trend oriented.
Right.
You get me? So no matter what you do, even if it's something really useful, if you don't make it a trend, then you're not reaching out to people. It's just as simple as that. As sad it is, it's as simple as that. So that's something that we try to work on as much as we can. Try to sort of make it a sort of trend to get students within our city to engage in humanitarian work, specifically more than activism. We try to promote the whole cause of getting people to serve society.
Hmm.
That's mainly our utmost motive, is to get people to sort of help people that are around in the disadvantaged societies, in the BPL sort of class. So that's something that we work on very closely. So what we have done is we've created a sort of system where we get college and school ambassadors from different parts of the city, and they engage their community members with the Bangalore student community, their school members and college members with our organization. So this
Right.
is a mechanism that we use to sort of have everyone active. So I'll just give you another instance again. We have taken up issues where it did not concern anybody, for example, and we had nobody who was interested to come in. And at the same time, we've taken up issues that concerned a lot of people, and they were all really interested to come up. So that's something I really like about what's happening right now, is that people are really interested to come and work with you when you have issues that are sort of concerning them. So this is a new trend that's being developed, and that's something that we work around with very often.
Dude, in activism or building a community, is there a niche that you have to follow, or can you constantly expand your horizons in terms of what you can achieve as a community? Right. So if you talk about environmental activism, is environmental activism only restricted to environmental related causes, or do communities come together to support various different causes in general, uh, 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 while moving forward to build or bring about change?
Okay, so there are two answers to this. So practically speaking, you are not limited to any boundaries in activism. You can go to any extents to prove your activism. But on paper, if your organization promotes a specific number of goals, you're meant to stick to those goals.
Okay.
But you're not, of course, obligated to just stay within those boundaries theoretically, because as an organization, if for example something happens to one of your own members and it's a social issue, you're more than welcome to go and take it up. But if your organization goals don't match to it, then that of course has that's of course problematic in its own ways, because um, uh, just for example, companies, right, when you try to look for CSR funding, etc., they look at your organization goals and then give you funds. So you have to be really careful about the issues and topics you take up. It's a very practical sort of thing, because if you go to any activist, they'll just say you have no like limits to activism. You can do anything, etc., which is true to a very large extent. But on paper, you have to be really careful, especially when you're managing like a large community.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Dude, I think we have covered most of the topics related to building a community, starting out as an activist. If you want to start out, what are the different avenues that you can probably take if you want to build a cause, grow a cause? Um, let's just end it with three of your greatest learnings as being a humanitarian or an activist till now, and how has activism and what has activism really taught you at an individual level?
So, three of my greatest learnings would be one, India is a very diverse country, and in India, there is always scope, growth, requirement for humanitarians to come out and help. It's as simple as that. Simply because we are as diverse as this, there is always the need to help. To what we also need to know is that no matter how much government intervention takes place, it could be any government that is there in India. No matter how much government intervention takes place, there will always be gaps for people to come out and help. And thirdly, activism is a stream where it's never ending, right? You could get into activism, like you said, get from environmental activism to different sorts of activism. There's In India there is thousands of issues that need to be solved. So activism is something that is never ending. It's Many people take it up as a profession themselves. And coming to my greatest learnings is one that, youngsters within our age group, I really think it's important to engage them, because simply because they keep saying we're the next gen, right? So being the next gen, it's important you start getting involved in these sort of conversations at the earliest, because 10, 15 years down the line, if we have to have a good ecosystem, politically, environmentally, socially, economically as well, we have to start working towards it right now. So my goal is always not just to sort of get people engaged within my community. My
Hmm.
goal is to create leaders. So that's
Right.
something that I'm working on, and creating leaders is going to be my task for the next couple of years, because I want to engage people as much as they can within the sort of framework that I explained.
Dude, thank you so much. I think all of the points that you mentioned make a lot of sense, and it gave me as well an understanding onto how I can probably contribute to some sort of a cause if I need to. For anyone who wants to get into activism, or if someone really wants to be part of a change, you can use the pointers that Dhruv has given today to actually start out your journey. I think what is needed is consistency. It's not going to be as simple as it probably looks at the end of it, right? We usually end up seeing the end goals of what a process leads to, but we do not understand the process. But the process is important, and if you're willing to get through the process, if you're willing to give the time and the put the time and the effort to actually support the cause you're really passionate about, you will be able to change and bring about change in the society in general. And Dhruv, I wish you the best, and I wish you a lot of success in terms of what you're trying to achieve with the Bangalore student community. And I hope that a lot of other individuals as well start to probably bring about change within their communities and impact their society, however small it is, in some way or the other. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I would love to have you again in the future.
Thank you so much, Mihir. It was a pleasure. Thank you.